They told you virginity is sacred, that it defines your worth, your purity, your future. But what if everything you've been taught about it is a lie? What if virginity isn't what you think it is, and never was? Let's talk about the 5 biggest lies you still believe about virginity, and why it's time to finally break free from them. Let's be real for a second. Virginity is one of the most misunderstood, misused, and manipulated concepts in our society. It's not just a word, it's been turned into a badge of honor for some and a stamp of shame for others, and I'm here to dismantle the myths that have lived rent free in your head for far too long. Lie number 1: virginity is a physical thing you can lose. You've probably been told that virginity is something tangible, that once you lose it, it's gone forever. Usually, this idea is wrapped around the concept of a woman's hymen. But here's the truth: your hymen isn't a sealed envelope that gets broken. It can stretch or tear from everyday activities like riding a bike, playing sports, or even using a tampon. Virginity isn't a medical condition. It's a social construct built and defined by people who want to control how others experience intimacy. Lie number 2: your worth is tied to your virginity. Let's say this louder for the people at the back. Your value is not defined by whether or not you've had sex. Society has built an entire system where people, especially women, are praised or punished based on their sexual choices. But think about it. How can something so personal be a measuring stick for your integrity, intelligence, or dignity? It can't, and it shouldn't. Your worth is innate. It's who you are when no one is watching. Virginity doesn't increase or decrease that. Lie number 3: men don't have virginity, only women do. This one right here, a total double standard. Virginity has been weaponized mostly against women, while men are often encouraged to lose it as early as possible. Why? Because for centuries, culture has chosen to police women's bodies and celebrate men's conquests. But let's be honest, virginity, if we're going to talk about it at all, should apply equally to everyone. Otherwise, we're not having an honest conversation. We're just upholding outdated power dynamics. Lie number 4: if you're not a virgin, you're damaged goods. This lie has caused unnecessary shame and pain. It has silenced survivors of sexual assault. It has made people feel like their past defines their future. But here's the reality: you are not damaged, you are not less, you are not broken. Whether your first sexual experience was beautiful, confusing, traumatic, or intentional, it doesn't reduce your humanity. Your experiences are part of your story, not your identity. Lie number 5: waiting until marriage makes you more pure, more holy, or more worthy of love. Listen, if you want to wait, that's your choice, that's beautiful, but do it because you want to, not because you've been told that sex before marriage makes you less than. Purity is not about whether or not you've had sex. It's about your heart, your intentions, your honesty with yourself. You can be celibate and still toxic. You can be sexually active and still full of love, respect, and integrity. Virginity doesn't purify you. Character does. These lies have controlled generations. They've built fear into education, shame into conversation, and silence into relationships. But you don't have to keep carrying them. You get to unlearn. You get to redefine your understanding, and most importantly, you get to take back your power. Let's be real for a second. Virginity is one of the most misunderstood, misused, and manipulated concepts in our society. It's not just a word. It's been turned into a badge of honor for some and a stamp of shame for others. And I'm here to dismantle the myths that have lived rent free in your head for far too long. From a young age, many of us were taught that virginity is a physical thing you can lose, like dropping your keys or misplacing a book. But let's challenge that idea. What does it even mean to lose your virginity? The common belief is that it's the moment you have penetrative sex for the first time. But who made that rule? Who decided that this one specific act holds the power to define your sexual status? And more importantly, why do we accept it without questioning? The truth is, the concept of losing virginity isn't based on biology, it's based on ideology, a social belief. It implies that something valuable was taken away from you, that before you had something whole, something sacred, and now it's gone. That's not just misleading, it's damaging. This narrative has led countless people to feel guilty, ashamed, or even ruined because of a choice they made or something they experienced. It's crucial to understand that sex doesn't diminish your value, and it certainly doesn't take something from you. You don't lose anything unless you choose to define it that way. Much of the confusion and pressure around virginity stems from the myth that it is a physical condition that can be proven or checked. Especially for women, the hymen has become a symbol used to confirm virginity or suggest promiscuity. But let's get one thing straight. The hymen is a thin piece of tissue with no universal structure. Some people are born with very little hymenal tissue. Some have flexible hymens that stretch. Some tear theirs during regular activity. And some don't bleed at all during their first sexual experience, so using the hymen as a so-called test of virginity isn't just inaccurate, it's deeply unscientific. Even worse, these myths have been used to justify harmful practices like virginity testing and public shaming. It's rooted in control, controlling bodies, controlling choices, and controlling narratives. When we focus so heavily on virginity as a defining moment, we rob people of the freedom to explore, learn, and grow in their own time. We place them into boxes where they are either pure or impure, worthy or unworthy. That kind of thinking doesn't uplift people, it traps them, and yet these ideas persist. Why? Because society benefits from control. Because shame is a tool that keeps people quiet. Because when you're taught to tie your self-worth to something as ambiguous as virginity, you become easier to influence, easier to judge, and easier to silence. But let's be very clear, virginity is not a universal experience. It doesn't look the same for everyone, and it certainly doesn't define who you are. Your sexual journey, whether it has started, hasn't started, or never will, is your own. No one gets to put a label on it based on outdated traditions or cultural shame. The word virginity itself is loaded. It comes with expectations, with pressure, with fear. For some, it's tied to family honor. For others, to religious guilt. But at the core, all of these interpretations boil down to one dangerous lie, that your body is only as valuable as its sexual history, that your first experience marks a loss of innocence. That once it's gone, so is your purity, your image, your place in society. These are stories people have told to maintain control, but you have the power to rewrite those stories. You have the right to question them, to understand your body beyond the myths, and to decide what your choices mean to you. You've probably grown up hearing that your worth is tied to your virginity, that your value, especially if you're a woman, somehow increases the longer you remain untouched, unopened, or pure. This message isn't just whispered in strict households or religious gatherings, it's everywhere. It's in the way schools teach abstinence without education. It's in the double standards we see in movies, where the good girl saves herself and the bad girl suffers the consequences. It's in the way some parents treat their sons and daughters differently, as if one has a right to explore while the other must be protected at all costs. But let's break this down. Virginity is not a currency. It does not make you more or less of a person. Your value is not sitting in some invisible vault waiting to be withdrawn when you decide to have sex. The problem with tying worth to virginity is that it teaches people to see themselves through a filter of shame or superiority based on something deeply personal and nuanced. Imagine believing that a single act can alter your dignity, erase your accomplishments, or redefine your personality. That's the kind of power this lie has held over people for generations. And for what purpose? Control, guilt, silence. These are the tools used to keep people, especially women, within the boundaries set by a society obsessed with appearances and obedience. Let's go even further. When you teach someone that their purity is their pride, you also teach them that their mistakes are permanent stains. You teach them that they're broken, unlovable, or unworthy of respect if they deviate from that script. This lie doesn't just impact people before sex, it follows them after. It shows up in relationships where people feel undeserving of love. It echoes in the silence of those who experienced sexual trauma and believe they're now ruined. It fuels the fear of judgment, the inability to ask questions, and the guilt that festers quietly inside. And what's even more painful is how selectively this lie is applied. Men are rarely, if ever, told that their worth depends on their sexual restraint. In fact, many are celebrated for doing the exact opposite. They're praised, encouraged, and even rewarded for being sexually active, while women are told to protect, preserve, and prove themselves by not doing what others are applauded for. This double standard doesn't just reveal society's hypocrisy. It highlights a deeper agenda to control women's choices and autonomy. When your worth is tied to virginity, you are reduced to something less than a full human being. You are made to believe that your moral standing is hinged on one decision, one moment, one part of your life, but worth is not conditional. It doesn't fluctuate based on what you do or don't do in your personal life. It's not hanging in the balance, waiting for a stamp of approval. Your worth is rooted in your character, your spirit, your mind, your voice. It's in how you treat people, how you grow, how you show up in the world. And yet, despite how destructive this lie is, it continues to be passed down, often by people who were also trapped by it. It continues to shape self-esteem, relationships, and entire identities. It influences how people carry themselves, how they see others, and how they define love, loyalty, and respect. But none of those things should ever be measured by something as fragile and misunderstood as virginity. Because if someone has to prove their worth by what they haven't done, rather than who they are, we've lost the plot entirely. ChatGPT said, "The belief that virginity only applies to women and not to men is one of the most deeply rooted and toxic lies our culture continues to uphold." It's a lie built on centuries of patriarchal thinking that creates two very different sets of rules for how men and women experience their sexuality. From the moment children begin to learn about sex, either through formal education or through the media, they're given radically different messages based on their gender. Girls are taught to protect themselves, to say no, to wait, and to keep their bodies sacred. Boys, on the other hand, are often taught to pursue, to explore, and to conquer. It's this imbalance that creates a false narrative that women have virginity and men do not. Virginity, if we're going to talk about it at all, should apply to all people equally. If we define it as not having had sex, then that definition doesn't change based on who's involved. But the reason it's only associated with women is because historically women's bodies were seen as property, something to be given, owned, traded, or kept. This mindset turned virginity into a symbol of value, but only for women. Men were never judged by it because their worth was measured by other things: strength, success, dominance. So while girls were told to keep their legs closed, boys were taught to keep score. That double standard is not just unfair, it's dangerous. It teaches young boys that their masculinity depends on how quickly they can lose something that no one is even asking them to define. It encourages them to prove manhood through conquest, not connection. It trains them to see sex as a prize and their partners as targets. This mindset doesn't create confident, self-aware men. It creates confused boys who link their self-esteem to a performance they were never properly educated about. And it creates girls who are expected to carry the emotional and moral weight of every sexual decision in a relationship when only women are expected to uphold virginity. The conversation becomes one-sided, lopsided, and filled with shame. Girls are monitored, questioned, and judged. Boys are excused, praised, and left unchecked. This imbalance isn't just cultural. It's visible in laws, in schools, in families. In some places, girls are pulled out of school when they're suspected of being sexually active. They're forced to undergo virginity tests. They're married off early to protect their purity. Meanwhile, boys walk free, unbothered, untouched by these same rules. That's not just inequality. It's injustice even in modern, progressive spaces. These outdated ideas show up in subtle ways. Think about how many times you've heard the phrase, "he took her virginity." The very language implies that something was removed from the woman and nothing happened to the man. As if sex is something done to women, not something shared by two people. As if men are the actors and women are the acted upon. This isn't just about grammar, it's about how we frame reality. The words we use shape our beliefs, and our beliefs shape our behaviors. If we continue to ignore how this lie is gendered, we continue to create harm. We continue to let boys grow up without proper sexual education. We continue to let girls carry the shame that was never theirs to hold. We continue to teach one group that their value lies in restraint and another group that theirs lies in experience. That gap causes silence, secrecy, miscommunication, and deep emotional wounds. It breaks trust, fosters fear, and pushes people into roles they never chose for themselves. The myth that virginity only applies to women reinforces a world where men's actions are excused and women's are condemned. And until we dismantle that belief, we can't have honest, healthy conversations about sex, relationships, or personal choice. The idea that if you're not a virgin, you're somehow damaged goods is one of the most harmful and cruel narratives society has ever pushed. It's a belief that doesn't just shame people, it erases them. It makes them feel like their worth is gone, like their value has been diminished forever because of one choice, one experience, or worse, something that wasn't even in their control. This belief is rooted in judgment, in control, and in a deeply flawed understanding of human worth. It turns people into objects, defining them not by their character, their dreams, or their heart, but by what they have or haven't done with their bodies. The damaged goods label doesn't just affect people emotionally. It affects how they see themselves, how they show up in relationships, how they think about love, intimacy, and even forgiveness. It creates a world where people walk around with invisible scars, not from what they did, but from how they were judged for it. It silences survivors of abuse, making them feel like they are no longer worthy of dignity or respect. It traps people in cycles of guilt and self-hate, convincing them that they'll never be good enough again, and what makes it worse is that this idea often comes from people who claim to care. It's passed down by families, churches, schools, spaces that are supposed to protect and uplift, not condemn. People are told that they've given away something they can never get back, that no one will truly love them now, that they've ruined their future. These messages don't teach responsibility or wisdom. They teach fear, they teach shame, and they teach people to measure themselves through the lens of regret rather than growth. But here's the truth. Your past doesn't define your future. Your experiences don't make you less human, less beautiful, or less deserving. If we believed that, then no one would ever have the chance to grow, to change, or to begin again. Everyone makes decisions they later rethink. Everyone has moments they wish they could rewrite, but those moments are part of your story. They don't destroy it. They don't reduce your essence or take away your ability to love and be loved. What this lie really does is rob people of healing. It takes away the space to learn, to reflect, and to move forward without being dragged back by a label that was never theirs to wear. It turns sexuality into a trap instead of a journey. It creates a narrative where purity is not about your intentions, your love, or your values, but about whether you fit into someone else's idea of acceptable. That's not empowerment. That's erasure. People are not cartons of milk with expiration dates. They don't lose value after a certain moment. They evolve, they become wiser, they find clarity, and sometimes they make choices they regret. But that regret doesn't make them less worthy. It makes them human. To carry shame because of something natural, something that is part of being alive, is to carry a weight that was never yours to bear in the first place. And yet, many people live their entire lives with that burden because of what someone once said about virginity, and value the idea of being damaged goods. Also limits how people relate to each other. It teaches others to judge, to rank, to categorize people based on what they know nothing about. It creates insecurity in relationships where one person feels constantly inferior, constantly trying to prove they're still worthy of love. It builds walls instead of trust, it fuels silence instead of honest conversation, and it ultimately prevents people from experiencing love that is rooted in truth, in acceptance, and in real connection. The lie that not being a virgin makes you damaged has never protected anyone. It has only hurt people, isolated them, and convinced them they are less when in fact they are still whole. So the next time someone tries to measure your worth by your virginity, remember this. Your body is not a battlefield for outdated beliefs. You are not defined by what you've done or haven't done. You are defined by who you are, what you stand for, and how you love yourself. Take back your narrative, let go of the shame, and never let anyone make you feel like you're anything less than whole.